1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 1. One day, Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Come on, let's go over to where the Philistines have their outpost." But Jonathan didn't tell his father what he was doing. Verse 2. Meanwhile, Saul and his 600 men were camped on the outskirts of Gibeah, around the pomegranate tree at Migron. Verse 3. Among Saul's men was Ahijah the priest, who was wearing the ephod, the priestly vest. Ahijah was the son of Ichabod's brother Ahitub, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of the Lord, who had served at Shiloh. No one realized that Jonathan had left the Israelites' camp. Verse 4. To reach the Philistines' outpost, Jonathan had to go down between two rocky cliffs that were called Bozez and Seneh. Verse 5. The cliff on the north was in front of Michmash, and the one on the south was in front of Gibeah. Verse 6. Let's go across to the outpost of those pagans. Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Perhaps the Lord will help us, for nothing can hinder the Lord. He can win a battle, whether he has many warriors or only a few." Verse 7. Do what you think is best, the armor-bearer replied. "I'm with you completely. Whatever you decide." Verse 8. All right then, Jonathan told him, "We will cross over and let them see us." Verse 9. If they say to us, "Stay where you are, or we will kill you," then we will stop and not go up to them. Verse 10. But if they say, "Come on up and fight," then we will go up. That will be the Lord's sign that he will help us defeat them. Verse 11. When the Philistines saw them coming, they shouted, "Look, the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes." Verse 12. Then the men from the outpost shouted to Jonathan, "Come on up here, and we will teach you a lesson. Come on, climb right behind me." Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "For the Lord will help us defeat them." Verse 13. So they climbed up using both hands and feet, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer killed those who came behind them. Verse 14. They killed some 20 men in all, and their bodies were scattered over about half an acre. Verse 15. Suddenly, panic broke out in the Philistines' army, both in the camp, in the field, including even the outpost and the raiding parties. And just then, an earthquake struck, and everyone was terrified. Verse 16. Saul's lookout in Gibeah of Benjamin saw a strange sight. The vast army of Philistines began to melt away in every direction. Verse 17. Call the roll and find out who is missing, Saul ordered, and when they checked, they found that Jonathan and his armor-bearer were gone. Verse 18. Then Saul shouted to Ahijah, "Bring the ephod here," for at that time Ahijah was wearing the ephod in front of the Philistines. Verse 19. But while Saul was talking to the priest, the confusion in the Philistines' camp grew louder and louder. So Saul said to the priest, "Never mind, let's get going." Verse 20. Then Saul and all his men rushed out to the battle and found the Philistines killing each other. There was terrible confusion everywhere. Verse 21. Even the Hebrews, who had previously gone over to the Philistine army, revolted and joined in with Saul, Jonathan, and the rest of the Israelites. Verse 22. Likewise, the men of Israel who were hiding in the hill country of Ephraim joined the chase when they saw the Philistines running away. Verse 23. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle continued to rage even beyond Beth-aven. Verse 24. Now the men of Israel were pressed to exhaustion that day because Saul had placed them under an oath, saying, "Let a curse fall on anyone who eats before evening, before I have full revenge on my enemies." So no one ate anything all day. Verse 25. Even though they had all found honeycomb on the ground in the forest. Verse 26. But they didn't dare to touch the honey because they all feared the oath they had taken. Verse 27. But Jonathan had not heard his father's command, and he dipped the end of his stick into a piece of the honey cup and ate the honey. After he had eaten it, he felt refreshed. Verse 28. But one of the men saw him and said, Your father has made the army take a strict oath that anyone who eats food today will be cursed. That is why everyone is weary and faint. Verse 29. My father has made trouble for us all. Jonathan exclaimed, A command like that only hurts us. See how refreshed I am now that I have eaten this little bit of honey. Verse 30. If the men had been allowed to eat freely from the food they found among our enemies, think how many more Philistines we could have killed.